Welcome, everyone. Let me go over the format for the sake of the participants as well as the audience. Each candidate will make an introductory statement lasting about 2 minutes each, and I'll start there and just run down. And then we'll ask questions to which you all will respond. I don't know how you do this, but in a minute. And we have a timekeeper who will keep you aware of the time. Okay, all right, just better. So tonight, obviously, is about the environment. And there are 3 large areas that we hope you all will address: will be climate adaptation and resiliency, Chesapeake Bay Restoration, and land use management and growth. So those are the 3 areas. We may not hit them exactly on target, but all those issues will come up and hopefully answer to the questions. So I will start with the initial question. Pardon? Oh yeah, I already forgot. Dave, why don't you introduce yourself before I ask my brilliant questions? You may.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Stepp. Been a leader, coach, volunteer, and mentor here in Talbot County for over a decade. My wife and 2 kids moved here from Caroline County back in 2010. Professionally, I've been in the telecommunications industry for over 23 years. Served in many leadership capacities within the telecom industry. We're also a small business owner of 2 companies here locally in Talbot County. Personally, I love anything to do with the outdoors. Hopefully that everyone has seen the signs out there. Obviously, the environment is a huge passion of mine with the rockfish on my sign. So avid outdoorsman. Anything to do with the outdoors is right up my alley. The main reason I'm running is to protect folks' rights and freedoms. That's where everything stands. Where basically the core of what I'm running for. I believe in faith, family, freedom, fiscal responsibility, and fighting for you. Whether that's the environment, whether that's any of your concerns that you may have, that's what my intent. If I'm to be elected to the county council by. So thank you for your time tonight. Looking forward to the conversation, and hopefully, if you have any additional questions afterwards, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
David Montgomery.
Thank you. I'm going to keep it moving by not standing up with the crowd that we have here. What I read in my instructions were to talk about my environmental goals, so that's what I will do, and I'll end up with a little bit on myself. My environmental goal is to preserve our quality of life here in Talbot County. There are 4 or 5 points I would make underneath that. The first one is, that means we're keeping it rural. We need to preserve our forests, our open space, and our wetlands. Activities that are consistent with those are farming, our farming for wildlife, for recreation. There are a number of ways that we can use to do that. In particular, hunters are great contributors to these efforts. The developers of solar fields aren't. So I'll come back to that, I'm sure. We need to improve the quality and productivity of the waters that surround us. We need to deal with agricultural runoff. We need to enforce permits. And in particular, I think the county needs to figure out a way to ban spraying wastewater on fields as a waste management practice, no matter what MDE says. Along these lines, we need one of the things we need to do, and the consequence of improving the quality of the waters is to preserve oyster, crabbing, and fishing as both industries and recreation. Water quality is an economic necessity for the county, not just an amenity. Without getting into a debate about climate change, I am convinced that improving resilience to storms and floods is absolutely central to what we need to do. I've been working on this subject for 30 years, and I'm convinced that we're not going to stop storms and floods from happening, but we can prepare for them. A lot of that has to be done by private individuals figuring out what's in their own interest. And if they want to do dumb things, they will be caught by it. But government needs to be sure that we do not encourage people to make dumb decisions. My professional experience, I think, is what will back this up. got a PhD in economics from Harvard. I got it when we taught real subjects, and it was on environmental economics.
Good evening, I'm Lynn Milkey, and like Howard, I've lived here for 4 decades. Unless you include the time that I was at Washington College in 1968, it was 4 years. So I have seen a lot of change, good and bad, in Talbot County and on the Eastern Shore in general. I've practiced law here for 43 years and I'm retired now, and want to turn my attention and my efforts and my energy over to helping Talbot County. First, I'd like to give kudos to the Chesapeake Bay Foundation for their 2 winning cases. The Valley Proteins case, as well as the Abington Woods deforestation case. Great job. I think that the development at Lakeside has woken a sleeping giant of our population as to the effects of development in Talbot County, as well as the effect of that development on the environment. And I think the new council to be elected is going to have a good task, which is to rewrite the comprehensive code. I also noticed that some counties in Maryland have had an environmental committee or board or advisory board. And I really think that we need that, because in rewriting the comprehensive plan, I think that we have to take environmental issues into account and not just turn it over to one of the developers at Lakeside who's going to do the water and sewer plan. We need people who are trained in environmental issues to help advise us. And if elected to the board, I would see that something like along those lines happens. I thank you for being here and welcome any questions either during or after our meeting. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Pete Lesher. Some of you know me as curator of the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum for the past 30 years. Some of you know me as one of your incumbent council members. I've been on now for 4 years. And I came in with the same goals that I'm running on now, which is really preserving a vision for preserving the rural character of Talbot County. And what that means is, in part, is ensuring that when we grow, and we will grow, is to make sure that that growth happens where we have the infrastructure already in place to support it. That's largely in our municipalities. It is also an emphasis on infill and on redevelopment rather than sprawling across the landscape. We have some tools in our tool chest to make sure that that happens. We have some cooperation with the municipalities in our in our overlapping comprehensive plans to ensure that that vision can be realized. I also have a vision for clean water, which I see as an important quality of life issue for us in Talbot County. The vision in the Clean Water Act of fishable, swimmable waters. And the county has an important role to play in that, in the regulation of and actual running of some of our wastewater treatment plants. We own the ones in Tillman and St. Michael's. We've got a very good one in St. Michael's. We need to clean up the one in Tillman. And we've just acquired the one at the preserve at Y Mills. There's work to be done there. There's also work on clean water to be done with stormwater. And the county will do that, is doing that directly with stormwater ditch retrofits along some of our roadways. It's important work. I look forward to working with you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and all of you for attending this evening.
Thank you, Pete. I'm Scott Kane. I've lived here in Talbot County with my wife and family for over 40 years. My education and training and background as a businessman, scientist, and engineer, starting my career with IBM. My life has been about making things better in business, better at finding solutions for tough problems, and better at leading organizations. I started my career in local government as the mayor of Chevy Chase, and I bring that skill to Talbot County and look forward to using it. I began my working career working on climate change. First, collecting and analyzing atmospheric and geologic data to see how climate is changing and how it affects our environment. I documented that climate change is real. I documented that climate change can be reversed. And that's the position I come from, and I look to implement those types of things for here. For instance, fossil fuels pollute. They pollute both by providing effluent out of the exhaust pipes and up our chimneys, but also waste heat. So looking at that, I started my solar energy company 12 years ago so that we could have renewable energy here on the Eastern Shore. Renewable energy doesn't pollute and it doesn't contribute waste heat to the environment. So that's one solution that I would continue to work on the county council. I've put solar systems into the town of Easton, working on their wastewater treatment plant. That solar system provides the electricity for that plant today. I've just finished the solar system for the town of Federal. We're doing the same thing for their wastewater treatment plant. But I want to do more. I want to lead initiatives that clean up our streams and rivers and the bay. I want to stop stormwater runoff that's polluting the bay. I want to find ways to do better things for the environment for Talbot County. I'm a solution finder and a solution implementer. That's what I got to do.
Well,
it seems worth commenting that we're here tonight to talk about the environment, and we have a Category 5, near 5 storm bearing down on Florida. I mean, radical weather, extreme weather is here, it's real, and we need to be focused on solutions in this county in every way possible to address that. A little about myself. I work in tech. I help governments modernize. I help them digitally modernize to address challenges that exist in government that we're all familiar with as citizens. I've worked in healthcare for over 13 years as a chief technology officer, and I was focused on bringing outpatient imaging to rural parts of the Eastern Shore. I've had a lot of fun doing that. In my free time, I'm the president of the Preserve at Y Mills, and I've worked for over 3 years, and I think both Pete and others on the council can attest to my determination to transfer that plant to the county so that the county has an opportunity to look after it, leverage Bay Restoration funds, and build a E&R plant that will better serve the citizens of the Preserve at Y Mills, but also better serve our environment. An E&R plant helps to reduce the amount of nutrient loading in the soils, and that's incredibly important. It's been a frustrating experience. It's a volunteer role, and I've had to become an expert in wastewater treatment, and that was not on my radar necessarily. When I think about getting involved in the county council, it's not because I aspire to be a politician, certainly not. It's because I know I have skills that can make our county council impactful, or can impact our county council and be useful. And that's why I'm here today. I've got 4 kids. I live in the county. They're all in the schools. I have a wife who's actively involved. Some of you may know that. We both believe that if we're going to call this place home, we need to contribute to it, make it better, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Keisha Haith. I am a native of Talbot County, been here all my life. My husband and I chose to stay here and raise our 3 children who all went through Talbot County Public Schools. I have been in local government for the past 21 years. Most recently, I transferred to work for a nonprofit that I founded, the Foundation of Hope, and now I serve as the president and CEO of that nonprofit organization, and will be a neighbor to this building at 52 South Washington Street next year, so close to this area. But I am running for county council because I feel as though I am a consensus builder. I have been able to solidify partnerships in the area of economic development, which is my area of study and field. And I believe that I have a lot of solutions to bring to the table as a Talbot County Council representative. I am a graduate of Chesapeake College. I hold a business administration degree from Chesapeake and a bachelor's degree in political science from Arizona State University. One of my areas within my platform is the environment. I believe that we need to have solutions to, as many of my colleagues mentioned, stormwater management, runoff, and make sure that we have clean water for generations to come. And with that, I am going to yield some of my time and pass the mic to Michelle.
Thank you, Keisha. Good evening, my name is Michelle Dapper, and I am running for Talbot County Council, as everyone else is up here as well. I really want to thank the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the League of Women Voters, NCTV, and all of you for showing up here tonight. This is a wonderful opportunity to speak with all of you. And you know, I'm reminded when I look around this room of one thing, and that is that Talbot County shows up, right? We show up when it matters. 15 years ago, I got my start as an advocate when I spoke at the county council on behalf of the Laptop 1-to-1 program, whose funding was threatened when I was in the class with them. Saving those laptops taught me the power of local government and the importance of those decisions. Those laptops also inspired me to earn a degree in digital communications at Emerson College and gave me my career. I went on to become a senior media planner. I work at a Baltimore-based advertising agency, but I work remotely out of Talbot because I'm lucky about that. I plan, execute, and then report on ad campaigns from clients that are as varied as building products companies, IT specialists, and the Maryland Department of Commerce. My job every day is to make sure that others are seen and heard. And I want to do that for everyone in this room and everyone in Talbot County. I've also lent my digital expertise to local organizations, including the Frederick Douglass Honor Society, and I serve on the Talbot Democratic Forum, where I am vice chair, and sit on their communications board. And in 2020, I was a technical specialist for the Board of Elections at the polls. I have a vision of Talbot where everyone can live, work, and retire in dignity, security, and prosperity. And as a great-granddaughter of immigrants and the daughter of a fiercely activist mother and service-minded father, I have always known the importance of building community and how that takes civic engagement. So thank you again for all being here, and I will give the rest of my time to Chuck.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. They sort of put me in the corner. So,
You've been there before.
I've been there before, yeah, exactly. So, welcome everybody. I'm Chuck Callahan. I'm currently in the council as president, and I got a great vice president too. A little bit that people don't know me. I'm born and raised here. I've got 2 kids. I've got many generations. My ancestors were here. My mom and dad graduated at St. Michael's. So I've got deep roots here. I graduated from Easton High School in '85. My boys graduated public school. I'm proud of being a firefighter. I'm a life member in the fire department. So, you know, I've been in here 8 years. So, the county council is an honor to serve for you guys. And I thought that I would help. I'm a problem solver. I own 3 businesses. I think that I've done very good in the last several years trying to balance what's been going on with sprawl development around here, especially environment. We've got some issues down to Tillman. I think we've tried to take care of that. We've got problems down to Bosman Nevick getting sewer down there. So these are very, very important subjects that we need to contend with in the next 4 years. So I'm hoping to be there to keep moving forward because we are on the process of getting to Bosman Nevick. So I hope everybody enjoys tonight, and I'll be glad to ask any questions after the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Chuck, you want to pass that down? Sure. Okay, for the next hour to 7:25, I'm going to ask these good folks some admittedly brilliant questions, at least in my opinion. We'll start with you, Dave, and then go down the road. So I want to keep this Talbot County specific. Talbot County specific. What actions can Talbot County take to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions and support climate change adaptation to address the existential, I never knew what that word meant, threat of climate change? Should Talbot County adopt policies that require net zero emissions for new buildings, or that all new buildings be solar ready? Should all county buildings, including schools, include solar roofs and be converted away from gas to electric fuel sources?
Well, thank you for the question, and I thank you for saying too that we should focus our responses specifically to Talbot County. As we all know, there's things that we can affect, as well as there's things that we also need to prepare for. I believe Talbot County has done a great job to date in making sure that we are on pace to to meet a lot of the goals, especially in CBS Blueprint. Do I think we should be fully reliant on nothing but green energy? No, because we're seeing issues, especially throughout the country, that that it's not doing the entire job, right? So to answer your question about buildings, it's very much a fluid question with a lot of responses. So should we be available to make sure buildings are retrofitted and ready for green energy? Absolutely. Do I think we should be fully reliant upon them? No. Just to make sure we're prepared for things like we just got done doing the resiliency plan for Talbot County. As I mentioned, there's things we need to prepare for. We have certainly low-lying areas. Sorry. A lot of questions for just 1 minute.
I know. Acronyms, let's deal in an acronym-free zone, so if you're going to use one, explain it. You use CBS. What was the acronym you used?
CDF.
CBS. Okay, I got that one. Thank you.
Howard, as usual, you ask far too many questions to get at in 1 minute without simplifying. So I will simplify. Yes, it's absolutely our responsibility and a wise thing to do to prepare for adaptation. The answer to all the rest of your questions is no. I have been working on climate policy. I've done studies that have been published in prestigious academic journals and all the way to testifying before congressional committees. There is no way that Talbot County can make a significant contribution to reduction in greenhouse gas emissions through adopting technologies that simply increase the cost of energy and increase the cost of government. And in the case of solar energy, actually take away farmland from productive use and interfere with our quality of life and ability to appreciate the rural surroundings. I could continue along these lines, but I think you get the idea.
I do, David. Thank you.
Difficult question. One of the issues I have is, how do we document the extent to which our county suffers from environmental problems? I know that there's a lot of talk about solar panels, and I tend to agree with David that I don't think that they're the real answer. I think they cause more problems. I think in some instances they are very good, but to have them large scale to deal with issues is not the best idea. One of the things I think that we have to look at, and particularly doing the comprehensive plan, is geothermal and requiring that for domestic housing and even for business housing, and to adopt policies along those lines. And again, the idea of having an environmental advisory committee for the council would be an excellent idea to address these issues as they come. Thank you.
There are certainly important things that the county can and should be doing for climate change, resiliency, and adaptation. And they include things like evacuation routes, and which is something that Oxford is working on, which is something that St. Michael's is working on, and that the county needs to work on its own and with the State Highway Administration to do. I do believe that there are places for the county to act in terms of greenhouse gas reduction in its own vehicle fleet, knowing that we have to do that in concert with a state purchasing program. Other counties should be interested in this as well. On codes, on solar codes, I'm cautious on that front because I also recognize our need to achieve affordable housing. We need to find some measure of balance between costs and affordability. to ensure that we can meet those needs in this community, because we are a local phenomenon of a national problem.
Thank you very much. I would say yes, absolutely, we could reduce greenhouse gases, and new buildings should absolutely be net zero. What needs to be done is what is done in other cities like New York, where they've mandated a change from fossil fuels to all electric, and that's the first path to get this job done. So it's a combination of solar, wind in some cases, geothermal, which Lynn has mentioned, which right here on the Eastern Shore, the Department of Education mandates that every new school have geothermal because it's so much better than any other approach to heating and cooling, and conservation, better insulation. I say this because this is what I do. I run a solar company, and I've put solar in a number of places in Easton, in Federalsburg. I put solar at the Federalsburg Volunteer Fire Company, and also the Federalsburg Wastewater Treatment. Solar does not take land away. I respectfully disagree with David. You can use carports in the macadam that we have and cover that with solar. Solar's cheaper as well.
Phil.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is important. We need to make sure that our buildings are ready, that they are net zero. I think, construction, design have come a long way to accommodate for that. Yeah, I'll speak from personal experience. I have 53 solar panels on the roof of my house. My energy costs are a lot less than some of my neighbors right now. I think heating oil is $4.80 a gallon in some places right now. That'll really hurt. That's a big bill you're going to get each month this winter. We should be pointing our compass and our North Star in the direction of doing things that can have a material impact on both the environment and on the cost of energy. Just because. I guess we're all privy to our beliefs and here, but it feels like we should be doing these things. This is important.
I believe, as Lynn mentioned, that we would need to establish a committee to explore this. I don't like mandates or forcing people to do specific things because we don't know what the cost burden may be to that individual, especially if you get into low-income earners and individuals like that. If we're going to say, okay, you have to have solar for a home, we are dealing with affordable housing already, which is a concern in Talbot County. So this would definitely have to be explored before I could say, yes, this is something that Talbot County needs to implement.
Thanks. So I want to echo Keisha on not wanting to commit to any specific mandate without knowing, more of a cost-benefit analysis. But one thing I want to point out is, as Scott was talking about with solar, the comprehensive plan right now has an element on conservation of farmland that can work in conjunction with solar panels. So I am supportive of including solar panel farms that are in locations that are already developed and not in, farmland that needs to be conserved on its own. So the program is the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation, and it's intended to permanently protect farmland by offering landowners financial incentives to voluntarily sell their development rights. And we've seen an increase in protected land, and I remain committed to expanding that program by increasing education among landowners that could benefit from it.
Yes, it's extremely important. What we need to understand, what we did as a council, the new school, the $50 million project that we did, the elementary school, it was net zero. So the council actually spent several years getting with the contractor and working with them so we could get to net zero, and it was a huge undertaking for the contractor. So I'm not sure we want to mandate anything. I think we would love to just work with the contractors and make sure that everybody is on board with trying to get to net zero.
Well, I literally have the mic now. I would like to remind you all that we're in the moderator segment of questions. Howard's got some more questions for the candidates here. Your questions on note cards, if you could please hand them to the usher by around 7 o'clock within the next half hour or so. We'll take questions after 7 o'clock, but if we can just get them to the usher before 7, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. If you all will indulge me because I believe environment is all-encompassing. So, per a conversation I had with one of you prior to this, what do you think Talbot County can do to increase civility in our public arena? And I'll stop there, Dave.
So, increase. Sorry about that. Someone was saying something. So, to increase civility, there's a phrase that I like to use. Disagreement doesn't have to equal disrespect. In the world we're living in today, that seems all too often that just a simple disagreement leads to disrespecting others, and I think that's ridiculous. We're obviously talking about the environment here, but there's things here that should cross political lines. There should be nothing political about them. Again, just because we disagree doesn't mean we have to disrespect one another. How we specifically do that? We have open conversations. We have hard conversations. It might not be the answer that either one of us would want to hear in return, but we respect each other during that conversation, and we listen to one another, and we try to come to common ground that benefits all of Talbot County. So, thank you.
I think I remember, and may sometimes have used the phrase that we should be putting county before party. That's really only a partial answer, because it's not just politics in which we have uncivil conversations. It's everything from, well, it goes beyond politics, or politics comes take over every conversation that we have. I think that the thing that is most necessary is to stop demonizing people who disagree with you. I would say the next really big step is to stop shunning people who you don't agree with. It's really disastrous in a county where we all see each other, have a good chance of seeing each other when we go to the grocery store or do any other normal activity, for people to be saying in public that you're a demon because of what you believe politically, or even worse, walk by you in the middle of your neighborhood and shun you to try to get you to change your mind.
I think civility starts in two places. One is the home, and one is at school. And establishing rules for children at a young age on what is civility and how to be polite. And so that's where it starts. I think that the council historically has done an excellent job in keeping everything civil. I've rarely seen a meeting where people are really out of control. Some of the incivility is beyond our control. Social media, where people can rant and rave. Some of our politicians who call names or use derogatory comments about their opponents. This group doesn't do that. So it's a start. We can't control it, but at least we can be civil and set an example for the rest of our county.
Yeah, civility is something that I've tried to model in my public life and my private life. That we model the behavior that we expect. That when we have somebody who comes at us, that we don't take the bait. That we lower the temperature in the room. And that's the way I've conducted myself on council. How do we make that happen? Modeling it alone, of course, is not going to solve our society's ills or our community's ills in incivility. The schools are part of the answer. The schools do teach things like social emotional learning. Well, what's that? It's self-control. It's self-awareness. It's what we talked about when I was a kid, which is just plain old good manners. Yes, the schools do have a role in that, and we need to support the schools in doing that, but we need to model the behavior that we expect ourselves.
Thank you, Pete. Yes, civility is very important. I agree with Lynn as she says it starts when you're in a young age. You get trained in this by your parents, your church, your schools. We need more of that so people understand at a young age what civility is and civil discourse. I wrote my dissertation a number of years ago on building consensus on the Clean Air Act of 1980. So I have practical experience in how to do that in a government situation. And you do it not by running on a Democratic agenda or a Republican agenda. I'm running on a Talbot County agenda. And to do that, that means you have to have the discourse and the conversations with everybody to the point where you come to some agreement. And my example of that is I've built consensus on the solar panel where we've got unanimity among farmers, businessmen, and government employees to come up with a consensus document.
I think Scott's comments really resonate with me around building or proceeding with the Talbot County agenda. You know, we have a number of issues in this community that affect us all equally. And I think that, you know, regardless of the disposition of the new county council, we have to be prepared to work together to solve those problems. And that's just a fact. You know, we don't have the luxury of drawing lines, you know, getting involved in culture wars. I think that we really need to get to brass tacks on the issues that affect this community. And that's really what I'm committed to doing. And I know certainly with the candidates that I've had the pleasure of engaging with, many of the Democratic candidates, some of the Republicans, just based on, you know, who we're socializing with, I think there is a willingness among many to do that. And I think that's, you know, that should be, I mentioned North Star, I use that a lot in my professional world, but that should be a North Star we all aspire to.
Thank you. Since running for county council, I've had to take yoga just to find my North Star. But, you know, as a lot of the candidates have mentioned, you know, it does start in school, it starts in the home, your church life. But like Pete said, you know, I really try to model what I teach and preach because I am also an ordained minister. So we all know, you know, love your neighbor as yourself. That's exactly what I try to do. I have neighbors that are Republican, Democrat, Independent. We all come together, you know, for a block party. It doesn't matter. You know, we see each other in the grocery store. You know, it's okay to disagree, but disagree nicely, be respectful. You know, my pastor says my response is my responsibility, and it is. How we respond to things is our responsibility. We don't have to respond nasty to one another. So that is my goal, to ensure that no matter who serves on the county council, that we all work together and get along. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to point out, sorry, I'm forgetting who it was that brought it up, but the importance of social emotional learning and learning at a young age is something I'm remembering. Character Counts when I was at Easton High. And you know, that program really helps set you up. I think our teachers do an amazing job, and I want to continue to support that. And I think all of this starts with listening to each other at the national, state, local level, in the grocery store, at your church, just making sure that you are open to hearing other ideas. I love learning. I love being told that I am wrong as long as it is nicely, so that I can have an opportunity to grow my mind and expand what I know. That starts, for me, as something that I want to model to others and to make sure we see at the county council, again, no matter who we end up working with on that council.
Yeah, I would agree with all the candidates. Look, it starts with a great attitude, getting up in the morning, thanking the Lord that you're awake and alive. Okay, that's where it starts. It does. So, look, I've been on the council for, like I said, 8 years. And we've had some great council people, great council ladies. And look, it's not a DNR thing, it's the person's character. And look, we've got a lot of great people up here. Everybody's heart's in Talbot County. You just have to have the great attitude. And the biggest thing that people don't do nowadays is listen. They don't listen. And you know, you've got to take the information in. You've got to respect people. And you make a decision. That's what the council does. We are going to be working for you guys. So that's the way you have to go about it, to be very respectful.
In deference to civility, I won't pick on you for the first question anymore. I apologize. I put you on the spot.
But you did well.
I only had a minute for like your first 6 questions.
I know, but you showed your depth. Let me start with Mr. Montgomery. What measures should Talbot County take to increase support for vulnerable communities, including communities of color affected by climate change?
That's not an easy question, because the place where we have to start out is figuring out exactly where those communities are and how they're being affected. I would separate out climate change in particular. I know that Bay 100, the whole area, and further down you get, is one where we have increasing poverty among the elderly, housing that is probably vulnerable to sea level rise or storms. I think that is probably something that we need to take up in the context of thinking about affordable housing as a whole. Saying that we have to do something about it because it's climate is really short-sighted. The question is, where can the county intervene in order to provide assistance to vulnerable populations because of their poverty, their health status, their age, and having a good assessment of what climate vulnerability is for people's homes is part of that.
Thank you. What measures, I think if you have a countywide plan, that would address issues, whether it's the waterfront property in Oxford or whether it's, the properties in town. So I think that you have to have a consistent plan emanating from the county, and then have the mechanism within which to effect it and put it into practice to protect everyone. I'm not saying that the vulnerable communities would not be protected, but I'm suggesting that if we do it for all of us, we're all better for it.
Howard, it's a tough question. Where can the county have an impact on those vulnerable communities? And where are those vulnerable communities most vulnerable? Certainly in healthcare, including mental health care. The county really only has a peripheral role in that area. But what is the biggest expense for most households is housing. And we know that we have an affordable housing crisis. Are people going to have to move? Are we going to have to retreat? Are people going to have to recover from flooding events? And I think that we need to work. I don't think that the county alone can achieve an effective affordable housing program, but I believe that we can do that in concert with our municipalities and leveraging some of the state funding that is out there for that purpose that we are currently leaving on the table. I think probably the biggest answer to that is going to be in housing.
Thank you, Pete. As we look at this, there certainly are divisions within our community, divisions that aren't doing us any good and we need to correct. Some of these divisions are geographic, and some of the divisions are ideological, and some of the divisions that we have are based on circumstances. No one wants to live in poverty, but we have people, and we don't like to admit it, living in poverty in Talbot County. By some counts, we have 100 homeless people in Talbot County, and we need to address that because we only have homes for about 30 right now. So we need to work together to identify these needs. As Pete says, healthcare is crucial because not everybody has equal access to healthcare. Where I differ is I look that it's a county responsibility to implement programs that are going to solve these issues. And I would do that by establishing offices that are going to direct things like affordable housing, health care, and access to better services.
Thanks. I think it was mentioned when we were talking about civility that we have to do a good job at listening. And we need to do a good job at listening to people who live in these communities and understanding what problems they have. because I'm a fortunate guy. I don't understand the issues that people in these communities face, and I need to understand that better to do my job. One plan to cover all of the needs of this county, that's interesting, but I'm not sure it solves the problem. That seems like a really worthwhile place to start having those discussions. These are in many cases capable people where poverty has struck, and that's affecting their lives and that's affecting what they can do, but it doesn't mean that they don't want to have a say. So we can start there.
Can you please repeat the question?
What measures should Talbot County take to increase support for vulnerable communities, including communities of color, affected by climate change?
Okay, so I would say there's already educational opportunities in place with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. They have their education component. I think education is the #1 thing that we really need to do, and pulling those communities together to really talk about the environment, talk about what they can do to prepare. And as Phil said, listen, if we look around the room, we don't have many people of color here today. So outreach, getting to those communities, making sure that they're aware of what's available to them, and opportunities like this. How are those individuals notified in regards to a forum like this? So that's one thing, educating, outreach, making sure that we're partnering with the right entities like the Chesapeake Bay Foundation to help. Not necessarily that Talbot County has to do the work, but partnering with the experts and those that are actually out there doing it in the community.
So I want to echo Keisha here too, because I feel like, as someone who has come from a place of privilege, it starts with outreach and listening to everyone in the communities themselves, and recognizing a need to potentially utilize things like social media to increase the likelihood of them understanding about, forums like this, or reaching them even at the library or at home with videos on the subjects, and just really utilizing new technology to increase that outreach. I also want to point out, I do recognize there's a new study of environmental justice, basically, recognizing where communities of color or vulnerable communities, and how that interplays with climate change and, climate change. And that we have not done one with Talbot County, and it is something I would look to explore to do, and see about adding a study on environmental justice and how we can really, because I feel like we can't come up with a plan right on the spot when we don't really know what the problems are yet. So.
I think it starts with with technology a little bit when it comes to if we're going into these places that are a little bit unprivileged. The council right now has committed to broadband throughout the whole county. So that's a huge thing that we have taken place in the last about a year or so. We committed $3 million to have everybody in Talbot County get broadband. So, I think it starts with that. I think it also starts with, we have a great public works division that is working on getting stormwater management where it needs to be. So there's a lot of things internally that we're working on now to try to get, ditches, and we've committed $50,000 in FY23 for stormwater management. So there's things in progress right now that we're doing to try to help people get to the point where they're comfortable.
All right, thanks, Alan. So I'm going to take a little bit different approach with my response to this question. The question was how involving communities of color and climate change. I hear a lot of responses up here from other candidates that to me seem like they're a Band-Aid. And I've heard some other policies and whatnot mentioned, but a quick fact, I do agree that this starts with our children. What we need to do is get rid of things in our education system like social emotional learning and critical race theory, which is rampant here in Talbot County. Last time I checked, climate change doesn't see any colors or borders. We've spent over $500,000 of our taxpayer money on critical race theory here in Talbot County alone. So let's get rid of these divisive practices, start with our youth, correct it in the beginning, and give folks a fighting chance. Thank you.
Feel better being the last person?
I'll take it wherever you get.
Okay, I'm starting with you, Lynn. I thought maybe a subject that has been discussed a few times in the last 25 to 50 years, Chesapeake Bay Restoration. What steps can the county take to reduce agricultural pollution to Chesapeake Bay?
I don't know. I'll be honest. It's something I would have to learn and look into. I think that we have some policies in place that maybe are working a little bit, but I really would have to learn. And I'm on a learning curve on that issue. And I support it. I think that the bay is important. And I think our tributaries and our water, my biggest concern is the aquifer and the effect that overdevelopment is having on the aquifer for us. Not only here in Talbot County, but in Delaware. We all share an aquifer. Development is crazy over in Delaware. So I think one of the things I would really want to look into is the effect on the aquifer and the bay.
Just yesterday, I was on a tour of Talbot County with the Talbot County Soil Conservation District, looking at best practices in farms around Talbot County, where we provide funding to farmers to take marginal land out of sort of wetland soils, out of production, that doesn't produce good crops anyway, put them into wetlands, attract wildlife, but also because these are the lower lying lands at the edges of their fields, it's where the water drains and then settles out, and the sediment settles out before it reaches the bay waterways. We do have effective programs in place, and our job now is to encourage more of our farmers in this community to look to their neighbors who are already doing this and go and do likewise. There's important work out there. We can do this. We are doing this now.
Thank you very much, Peter. There are a number of important issues that we can take on as a county immediately. We can reduce surface runoff by fixing our ditches, parking lots, retention plans, restoring wetlands, and through development rebates and controls. We can do that now. We need to perhaps put pollinator plants in the ditches to stop the stormwater runoff. We need to reduce nutrient management, improve nutrient management farms and public land. We need to promote public education. Some of us excessively fertilize our lands, which causes runoff into the nutrient runoff into the Chesapeake Bay. But more and more, what we need to do is improve MDE. Maryland Department of Environment has done a very poor job at helping us in Talbot County. I met with Governor Hogan this morning and asked him specifically to take some action in his last days to fix MDE. I see I'd followed through on that.
Yeah, I'm sorry we only have 60 seconds to answer this question. I got involved with a wastewater treatment plant 3 years ago. And gosh, I didn't know what the Soil Conservation District is, that's for sure. But we just finished a project with them to stabilize an area that had become unstable and to improve runoff from our wastewater treatment plant. Nitrogen loading in our soils is a major issue for the Chesapeake Bay. And we need to be prepared to understand the impact that spray irrigation can have in our communities. We're building a very large community, Lakeside, and I am pro-development. I think development is good, and this community's been on the books for a long time. And we're proposing some conceptually great technology to address wastewater treatment. But as I say in my day job, you can sell technology all day long. If you don't have great people and process, in this case compliance and government around the edges to support technology, it will fail. And I have lived through that over the last 3 years. A plant that should work and a plant that has failed as a result of all of the things around the edges. So we need to be really smart about how we consider projects like this, and she has their stop sign up, and she's laughing at me, I'm sorry.
She did it nicely.
She did very nicely. I'm sorry.
Smiling when she did it.
I wasn't looking at you.
So we know that nitrogen and phosphorus is one of the major contributors to polluting the Chesapeake Bay. That after reading the Chesapeake Bay Foundation Blueprint report, we know that the nitrogen and phosphorus levels are starting to decline, not where we want them to be, but they are improving. But one of the programs that the agriculture community does do to help with a lot of the nitrogen and phosphorus is the cover crop program. And that is a major program within the agriculture community. That is the first line of defense against runoff and erosion in the winter. And it helps suppress the weeds and reduce compaction. So this actually protects the field from too much or too little water. So I think as a Talbot County representative, we want to continue to encourage our agriculture community to take advantage of the state and federal programs that currently exist, that are on the books, and that are helping reduce the nitrogen and the phosphorus.
Yeah, so generally speaking, well-managed farms actually produce less pollution in the form of nitrogen and phosphorus than an acre of new suburban development would. That's because, I mean, there's a variety of reasons, but conversion of farmland to urban suburban would also disrupt natural habitats. So an acre of farmland retains its rain filtration, remains in conjunction frequently with undeveloped forest land, and these work together to actually, over time, it contribute about 17% less than if we were to take away. So again, I want to point out the importance of conserving land. I also was just down on the farm. It was called a Down on the Farm program put on by the Oxford Museum, and the farmer there, Steve, took me around where he had voluntarily put in barriers between his farm and the one next door to decrease runoff in between. Now, there are incentives available, and we can do more to make sure that others do what he's doing, but his program should absolutely be replicated across Talbot County.
Okay, thank you. Right now, we have roughly about 400 miles of roads in the county. I think stormwater management is where it starts. Right now, MDE, Maryland Department of Environment, is working on a statewide regulation right now to change things. Their focus right now is going to be a little bit more not quantity, it's quality. They're going to focus on the quality of it, not how much we're doing, but the quality of phosphorus and the ditches and that type of thing. Like I told you a few minutes ago, council is focused on next year, or actually FY23 on the budget of getting $50,000, but we've got to actually get easements on properties and stuff. So it's kind of a work in progress to do this, but the council is focused on that.
So in regards to what we can do here in Talbot County, I think the answer has been laid out, and Keisha, you brought this up, thank you for doing that, in the 2021 State of the Blueprint with CBF, right? So the three things that we're either in danger of or not doing well are septic systems, runoff, and agriculture, both in the nitrogen and phosphorus categories. I always say we were born with 2 ears and one mouth. We know which one we should use more, right? So we should be listening to our farmers, thinking about how we can work together to make sure that we're utilizing practices, not just cover crops, but no-till farming, things like that will help in ensuring less runoff in there. I myself, when we bought our home here in Talbot County, we had a failing septic system. So making sure we're going after septic systems that are failing and that are just contributing direct pollution to our surrounding waterways. So those are a few that I would use to address as well.
Thank you. I guess it's an advantage being last because I get to say that there are a lot of good ideas. In fact, I don't think I heard a bad idea at all in this collection. So let me just try to pick a few to concentrate on. The first one is, I took your question to be agriculture pollution, and I think I was educated on this by Alan Gerard, thank you, that responsibility for the bay is divided up between Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. We have our own responsibility here for reducing nitrogen, other loadings. That's divided up among sectors, and there's a target for agriculture. We seem to be on track for doing that. It's not enough for the Bay, but we can't fix what's coming from Pennsylvania and other places. Second, for agriculture, I think we talked about a lot of things that work for agriculture. The important thing to me is that they be done in the context of incentives that make it continue to be profitable to do farming here, because we're never going to succeed in achieving what Ms. Gebhardt wants unless we can keep our farmers profitable. Thanks.
Thank you. That's, we have about, I guess, 20 minutes. I'm going to switch to land management. I know there's no controversy here in Talbot County about that. But let me awaken the giant. So if you view the environment of Talbot County, as I do, as a place to live and pray and work, and an incredible place, how do you relate land use management to Talbot County's quality of life now and in the future? Pete?
I don't have time to write down the answer. I'm just writing down the question.
Shall I repeat it?
I'm good. Look, I do see land use management as one of the most critical factors in the present and future quality of life in Talbot County. Keeping the rural parts of our county rural, keeping incentivizing growth in our already developed areas, in infill development where we have the infrastructure supported, is absolutely key. I walked here tonight. The walkable neighborhoods, walkable communities contribute to quality of life. They also contribute to the environment. It is a strong comprehensive plan. It is a strong comprehensive water and sewer plan, and it is these are the tools that we have to ensure that we do in fact follow that vision for good land use management.
Thank you, Pete. John?
Thank you, Pete. I'd like to use that as a segue and say that I fully agree with that. The comprehensive plan and the comprehensive water and sewer plan are key and crucial to Talbot County. Both are up for rediscussion and renewal in this next county council. So the people you see up here are the ones that are going to have to deal with that. And we want to deal with it effectively. I would start with a listening program to find out what's on your minds, make sure that we're incorporating what we need to change from 2016 to 2026, which is the new plan, and get a comprehensive land use plan that works for everyone. I would also say that the land use planning depends on getting water and sewer right, and so we have to focus on the water and sewer plan to make sure that the land use plan covers everything we need to get clean water for the Bay and our counties. And we need to follow examples of good wastewater treatment like that in the town of Easton.
Yeah, I mean, I think infill development is really important here. I grew up most of my childhood in Severn Park, Maryland. That was a community you could drive from your home, to the high school in, less than 10 minutes. It's really hard to do that in less than 20 minutes now. The impact that the development in that community has had has really changed the whole disposition of the community. And when we talk about a community that we love today, we want 20 years from now for our community to be what it is. I say that I'm pro-development, but I'm pro-thoughtful development. We need to figure out how to provide opportunities for people here. We need lots of good folks moving into this county to address things like healthcare, for example, to address affordable housing. But we need to do that in a thoughtful way. And I think that as we will have the privilege, if we are so elected onto the new council, we will have a responsibility to participate in that comprehensive plan. And I've used the term twice, so I'll avoid it again, but that really does set the direction for this county. And it is something that we need to be very focused on. It's a very important thing when we're voting this year. Let's keep that in mind.
So I'm going to echo what's been said. The comp plan is the vision for Talbot County. That is the roadmap for development, land use, etc. Ensuring that the Planning Commission can make a decision that is consistent with the plan is very important within the law. And making sure that that decision is enforced and not amended by the county council is extremely important. And I will leave it at that.
Which way was the compass pointed, Phil?
North, south, whichever way you want.
South, right, yeah. So one of the biggest ways that the county government can help clean up the bay and how, the question was relating land use to quality of life, is by supporting smart growth, right? So that's not a tagline. It means that I am committed to revitalizing communities in a way that balances need with growth. So we frequently see developments outpace what adequate facilities are available. And exploring the potential of adding something called an Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, or an APFO, would give us an additional tool, as long as it is consistent, as Keisha says, with the comprehensive plan that is excellent and very citizen vetted, that I fully support. It also means, and I want to bring back what Pete said about walkability, quality of life includes adding walkable and bikeable, just like we want our bay to be fishable and swimmable, right? So I would really love to explore adding rails to trails to connect Cordova, where my parents are, to Easton.
So I'll commit it. So everybody knows we have roughly about 4,000 septic systems in a critical area. Okay, that to me is a big deal. We've only upgraded roughly about 1,000. So land management starts there. I think that we need to do a good job and a better job getting to the Bosman area, the Bay 100 area, that for the quality of life. I agree with the bike trails and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, we need to have clean water, we need to have clean septics, and that's where it starts.
Just call your name, Alan. Dave.
Thank you, Alan. So I'll reiterate a couple of things of what I've heard already so far. Growth must follow our comprehensive plan. That document and the power of one word within that document, how that can change the outlook of our county, which we all treasure the way it is, being a rural county and a great place to live, work, and play, and raise a family. That comprehensive plan must be followed. Not an easy task, right? It is really a numerical, it has numerical definitions, which do not lie. When you have to battle with things such as housing markets, affordability, there's many different things that go into hitting that number correctly. So that's really where this lies, is making sure we follow our comprehensive plan, as well as making sure that water and sewer, which can certainly be a benefit for certain areas, are not a gateway for future unmanaged growth, which we have the potential for in Talbot County already teed up, unfortunately. So, David, do you?
I think land management is absolutely fundamental to our quality of life. And the first part of that for me really is retaining our rural character and our rural environment. Being able to see and travel through farmland, wetlands, see wildlife, drive down scenic highways without being embarrassed at what you see in the scenery. That's fundamental to our attraction as well as our quality of life. But it goes beyond that. Our quality of life depends on traffic congestion, other things that we experience. All of those, to me, demand that we need to restrain growth, not just concentrating it. Concentrating growth in Lakeside with a mall, Stan Watson just pointed out, 2/3 of the size of that of Annapolis Mall, is not the way to solve the problem. We need to restrain the growth overall, and in particular, I think the county government represents all of us. And in that sense, any town plans must be made consistent with an overall county approach.
I grew up on the eastern end of Long Island, and I saw what the lack of land management did to a community and to an area that was much like the Eastern Shore of Maryland when I was first living there. Smart growth's a good idea, comprehensive plan is a good idea, because I certainly don't want Talbot County to become Long Island, and that's where it's headed unless we really focus on these issues. And as far as the smart growth plan, part of the problem is that the county doesn't have enough power over it. It's delegated to the towns, and there's little that the county can control over it, which Lakeside is an example. So what we have to do is make sure that the county can have input, because that smart growth is going to result in development in towns, and then the county is going to have to pay for the infrastructure. Not a good idea.
Thank you. This will be the last question before going to audience questions. It was mentioned adequate public facilities. If you view that as including roads, school, wastewater, parks, green space, is that something that the county should be considering? Is it considering it? And do you think it's a good idea? I think we start with Pete. Or Scott, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Howard. Adequate Public Facilities Act is essential for Talbot County, and that would be one of the first things that I would propose working on as a new member of the County Council. Would follow what most of the counties have, Howard County, Prince George's County, they all have this, so that the developer, the development will pay for roads and schools and public services and police. We don't have that today. Yes, we have impact fees, but the developer should be paying those fees. Right today, if you look at Lakeside, they didn't pay for the fees that they need for adequate roads, public schools, services that we need to support that development. They should, and it's something that we need to require. It means that probably the developer will increase the cost of a house and pass that on, but people can pay that. The house prices in Talbot County keep going up, and everybody keeps buying houses. At the same time, they can put in housing for low-income people by lowering those costs and give Talbot County what it needs in terms of housing.
I think an APFO or an adequate public facilities ordinance, to stay on the rules here, I think it is important. Something that I'm not entirely clear on, and perhaps I'm naive. I've watched many council meetings. Is what calculus does in fact go into defining the investment that needs to be made by a builder or by a new homeowner? And really, I'm a big advocate of transparency, government transparency. I need a way as an individual to consume that math and understand how we got to that number and understand what investment is going to be made as just a regular human being. When I've watched county council meetings, I haven't necessarily achieved that level of satisfaction with how we go about that. And I think that's really important. If we're going to build new homes in this community, and we're going to build, commercial facilities, if we're going to develop, we need to have a path to funding to make sure that we have adequate resources.
Thank you, Phil. Keisha.
So let's be clear, for APFO, how it works, it's not going to make any sense if the municipalities don't buy into incorporating an APFO as well. We're going to be in the same situation. So first off, we work with MDP, Maryland Department of Planning, to establish the APFO. It's going to require exploring this along with the municipalities. If Talbot County adopts an APFO, trap still happens. So we need all of the municipalities to agree. And when we compare it to other counties, like Queen Anne's County, where I did economic development, Anne Arundel County, where I recently done economic development, those two counties are set up completely different than Talbot County. So we really have to explore the APFO along with MDP in order to decide whether or not it's going to be beneficial not only for Talbot County as a whole, but also the municipality. So there's a lot more that goes into saying that an APFO is the end-all be-all to Talbot County.
Yeah, I agree with Keisha. So I know I was the one who raised it, but I want to be clear that to get an APFO or an adequate public facilities ordinance passed, it does have to be worked through with the municipalities. We need buy-in, and it also needs a public review process, much like the comprehensive plan. So it would need to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and it is a tool that I believe is worth exploring because impact fees are great. They are a necessary tool to raise additional funds for capital projects, but they do not always require, or guarantee rather, that sufficient funding will be made available. So an APFO would require a funding source for projects be attached. And that would mean, rather than ending up going, where is the, what is this calculus, it would be attached from the beginning.
Yeah, I would agree. We need to do a better job as council with the towns, communicating with them what their future plans are. We were here last week with the planning lady that runs the planning commission in Maryland. So, sometimes when she's meeting with the towns, we don't know anything about it. So we need to do a better job with that. Right now, we're doing a study on impact fees right now to try to balance that all out on what's going on with the developers and everything. So that's what's going on right now. Thank you.
I'll echo several of the items I've heard here from some of my peers. Definitely the communication is a lackluster right now between the county and our municipalities. So that certainly needs improvement. An APFO is something we could consider, but again, I heard Montgomery County and Anne Arundel County have those as well. And if that's what an APFO is going to lead Talbot County turning into, I certainly wouldn't support it. It doesn't sound like it was implemented in the way that it should in those areas. Long story short, we need to do whatever we need to do, have whatever conversations we need to have at an earlier stage to make sure that our county does not turn into the next Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County, Howard County, etc. That's it. Thank you.
Good ideas all around. Following on what Dave just said, I think it's important that we set the standards in the APFO for what is an adequate public facility to a level that's consistent with our remaining a rural county. That means, for example, getting from Oxford Road across the bypass should be able to happen on one traffic light. If someone wants to put in 200 houses on Oxford, he has to make that happen, or he doesn't get a building permit. That's how I see an APFO working, and I think that's a great idea. Of course, we need to get the towns involved because the intersection, unfortunately, belongs to the town of Easton. I like the idea of making it more transparent what this calculation has in it. That's the kind of thing I've done for decade after decade. It's a straightforward calculation in one way that you can do in a spreadsheet. What's the revenue we expect to get from this incremental development directly in terms of property taxes and income taxes? What are we going to have to spend to provide public services up to the level we've defined we need? What's the difference? That's the impact fee.
I think there are three elements to make developers accountable for infrastructure. One is, as we talked about, impact fees, but they don't seem to be sufficient. Two is a development agreement. And I think that's both in, I know it's in the county code, and I believe it's in the Easton code. And I don't know how that is implemented or enforced, but it doesn't seem to be. And then there is what I've been advocating since day one when I joined this campaign, is the adequate public facilities ordinance. And that can put a halt on anything until they step forward and either the developer makes a deal to provide the necessary infrastructure. We really need to have that. And I think that the county can exert some authority over the towns for an adequate public facility ordinance. It's worth looking into, and I think that that is really the answer to a lot of our development issues.
I'm not giving into the peer pressure. I do want to see the people in the back row here. I agree that an adequate public facilities ordinance is absolutely worth exploring. I also agree that it can only be effective if we coordinate that with the municipalities. That really, our comprehensive plan and our code already channels the growth toward the municipalities. And so the large projects are going to happen within those municipal borders. Therefore, if we're talking about school capacity, if we're talking about road capacity, if we're talking about these big issues, that can only happen when we work with the municipalities. And that is something that I have particularly tried to do in my time on the council, is to work with my colleagues in municipal elected office, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We're not finished yet, but you're finished with my questions. We have some audience questions. We have 8, actually, and it's funny that nearly all of the 8 relate to land management. Seems to be a big surprise. So I want to dig into something many of you had just said. Let me read this to you. This year, Easton has approved, committed to, or is considering adding over 1,300 dwelling units. Can Easton approve all these developments and still maintain its rural, small town, close to nature quality of life? Who would like to take that question?
So far, only one of those projects has made it to the county council. So this next council will have a role in the county's response to that. Now, not every project in Easton will come to the county council, but the one at Estates at Gannon Farms, 200 and some homes, did, and I voted to approve it. Why? The question before the council was, does this get incorporated into the county's comprehensive water and sewer plan? And the question for me was, will Easton provide the best sewer service for this? The answer is yes. We've got others on the horizon, and I can't completely prejudge them, but the one on Oxford Road, for example, requires a critical area allocation from the council. And that's a limited resource. Will that limited resource be justified by that project? That's the critical question for the next council.
Anyone else?
He answered it.
Thank you for your answer to that. Let the record show I gave everyone a chance.
I would yield Pete a minute, 30 seconds if he'd like to expand.
You would like to stand up again? Say yes.
So I think that what you're asking me to expand on is that critical area allocation for the Oxford Road. So the point there is that that project is located on the headwaters of the Tread Avon River. It is within the critical area. Easton used up all of its critical area allocation, and therefore it needs to come to the county. Even the county's allocation of critical area resources is limited. And so we need to decide, when approached by maybe an industrial area that's going to provide jobs that is within the critical area but close to all of the services that an industrial park would need and those job producing projects might need. In those cases, we might need to say, yes, this can only happen here. That critical area allocation must happen. But if it's a housing project, what is the compelling case that that must happen only in this location? And I think that's a pretty high bar.
I'd just like to concur with what Pete said. And I think what the county has to be sure is it's going to be like Ebenezer Scrooge with these critical areas and growth allocations, and that they set a very high bar for them being issued because they're very limited in nature. And I think that we have to control that, and by that we control what the towns agree to development. So it's one arrow we have that we should use.
Anyone else? Okay. Let me go to another question. In today's Talbot Spy, the Talbot Integrity Project announced its campaign to, quote, reset, end of quote, the Lakeside development. And given the opportunity as a council person, would you support the initiative to reconsider Lakeside, especially with regard to the environmental consequences of its planned wastewater treatment?
Yes.
I second that emotion.
I think this is critically important. We need to take a look at Lakeside. It sort of snuck up on us without really understanding what it was, and now it's upon us. And as you drive down Route 50, you see the houses being developed. Those are the first 100 houses, and they are being tied into the wastewater treatment plant at Trapp based on the failures of MDE to identify, first of all, and then follow their own guidelines.
MDE being what?
Maryland Department of the Environment. Well, that I thought everybody knew that.
Well, I moved to the Western Shore, so I have forgotten.
Howard, you're closer to those guys, so maybe you can go fix it. But MDE is the start and root of that problem, and we need to get that fixed. I applaud Tip for going and raising the issue, studying it, and getting all of those answers for us so that we understand now a lot better what's going on. But as Lakeside develops, and it will develop, after 100 houses, and that's the opportunity for Talbot County to take a look and see if it's appropriate or not appropriate. That's the point where you can go stop it, and that's the more input that the citizens need. It needs to be a citizen discussion as to what goes on, and the county council needs to work much more closely with the town of Trapp so that there's good consensus between the town and the county as to what's going on.
I sat down with my 13-year-old son the other day and I said, "Did you do something stupid?" And I said, "Let's talk about that and let's figure out what we might do differently." I think, yeah, I might be making an analogy. I think what I want from my government is a government that's willing to insert the pause, ask the hard questions, and gosh, if we need to do something differently or change something, we should figure out a way to do that. Because the worst thing that any of us want is for a government to make a decision in haste or with limited information and then not react to the mistake when they know that mistake is in front of them. So that's something that I want from my government.
And his 13-year-old.
And my 13-year-old.
So I think what the county council has done as it relates to Lakeside is certainly an opportunity for those that are elected as the next council. Certainly is an example of what not to do in the future, if nothing else. However, within the confine of the law, if there is a way that the new council can revisit Lakeside and make a pivot, I am willing to do that.
Yes. So I'm agreeing with all of my colleagues up here, honestly. I believe that phase one is out of scale with the size of Trapp at the moment, and regardless of whether or not we have the opportunity to revisit that, and I would like to, phase two is still going to be coming before the next county council for W1/S1 designation. And so regardless, we do have a say in how it proceeds, and I would certainly support, changing tack right now.
I voted against the S1 designation for Lakeside when given the opportunity to do so. based on Lakeside's connection, reliance on a connection to TRAP's existing wastewater treatment plant, which is discharging 30 milligrams per liter of nitrogen. Yes, it's within their permit to do that. No, that's not acceptable today. That is not the modern technology. It would not be approved today, and we shouldn't accept that. Given the opportunity to revisit that, I absolutely would.
This is a rhetorical question from the audience. Will you all please stand up when you speak? Thank you. We don't have to go down. On this subject, I think it's on this subject, what importance do you put on the Planning Commission? Will you follow the recommendation provided to you by the Planning Commission in your decisions and votes? David Montgomery.
I'm very impressed by our planning commission and our planning process. I absolutely think that the county council should follow their guidance and recommendations. And that is an expression of confidence in the people that are on there that I know, as well as and it's an expression of confidence in their track record, that going back to at least the 2006 comprehensive plan, which I've studied, and the recommendations that the Planning Council has made since then about various issues, I think they do an extremely good job. They're knowledgeable, they're professional, and the institution of having a non-political body that can sit in an adjudicatory fashion to say yes or no to a major development that cannot be overruled by the county council is a really good thing, and the council should be much more careful about listening to the Planning Commission and backing them up to MDE than it's been in the past.
Thank you, David. Dave, Steph.
I will absolutely support the Planning Commission as long as the Planning Commission is supporting our Talbot County Comprehensive Plan. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Good point, David. That's where I was going to go. The council's actions with Lakeside and not following the recommendation of the Planning Commission was one of my prompts for running for office. I think the comprehensive plan and the recommendations of the Planning Commission are extremely important. The comprehensive plan that is currently in place says that between 2007 and 2030, they estimated that there would be 116 new homes in TRAP. Did the county council look at that? In fact, it says, at the time the water resources element was compared in 2010, the county and municipalities had granted at least preliminary approval for more than 5,500 housing units. 3,000 of these were planned by the town of TRAP. For the purposes of the following analysis, it is understood that some of the approved units will not be built and occupied by 2030, nor be occupied by full-time residents. So the council didn't even follow its own comprehensive plan on that issue. And I think it's time that we both give respect to the Planning Commission and the plan.
Thank you. Scott.
I'd like to second what David Montgomery has said, that the people on the Planning Commission are absolutely incredible, and the work that they put in is amazing. So if you haven't been to a county Planning Commission meeting, I encourage you to go or look at some of the videos. But the amount of analysis and the time these people spend with very detailed, mind-boggling things that it means the rest of us don't have to look at that. And they render, I've looked at this over the past commissions, great decisions, and those decisions, the ones I've participated in, are the solar legislation for the county and the short-term rental legislation for the county. And in each case, the work that the Planning Commission did was monumental in terms of what they were looking at to provide for the county and each of you as citizens. But when it gets to the county council, unfortunately, they don't have the time to look at it, and there's some quick knee-jerk kinds of reactions to some of the things that are in there, and it's watered down some things that are very important. Don't get me wrong, county council does some good work, but we should put more faith and effort into what's done by the planning commission.
Anyone else? Keisha?
I'm just going to echo with what's been said, what Dave said. Oh, sorry. It's past my bedtime. No, but I echo what my colleagues have said. Certainly would agree with what the Planning Commission recommends, as long as it is consistent with the law and the comp plan.
Thank you. Mr. Lasher?
First of all, let me say that I have the utmost respect for not only the knowledge, but the great training that our planning commission members must go through in order to hold that appointed unpaid position. There is some formulaic nature to the work of the planning commission. If you meet the 7 standards, you get your planning commission approval. When I was on the Easton Town Council, there were 1 or 2 instances where the planning commission said this meets all the standards, it gets the favorable recommendation. And yet, I, along with the council majority, voted no. And we had a planning commission that was unhappy with us. But there are times when other considerations besides those 7 standards must be taken into account by the political body, and that's why it is a 2-step process. There is a place for disagreement between the planning commission and the council, but that must be done with great care. I've been there, I understand the circumstances that might lead to that.
Thank you, Pete. Anyone else? Okay. I'm going to switch to environmental pollution question. Do you plan to expand the plastic bag ordinance to the entire county? David.
Absolutely not. We have seen the perverse effects that plastic bag ordinances have had all over the country in creating more waste load for municipal solid waste, in leading to excessive and unnecessary costs and disturbance of small businesses. And it really doesn't do a thing to have a small town just create this kind of irritation for the businesses that occur inside it. We are not going to solve the world's problem of plastic bags and solid waste here any more than we can solve the world's problem of climate change, when the fact is that 80 or 90, that even the United States as a whole doesn't even contribute 10% of the world's emissions.
Scott.
I fully support what the town has done with the plastic bag ordinance, because plastic is just a huge problem for the environment. My nephew went out on a journey on a boat in the Pacific. I guess you've seen some of that. And you find in the Pacific there's plastic that floats all over the ocean. This is the same plastic that we have in plastic bags and styrofoam. It's very easy to get rid of it, and I applaud the town council for doing that. It's not a harm on the business, not at all. The businesses are very used to this. McDonald's, Target, all of these companies embrace this. They just have to be asked. And so they were fully supportive of what the town did in the plastic bag ordinance. Whether the county jumps on board with that or not, I think is a bit of an issue, because 95% of the large stores, Giant, Target, all of those are within the town. So the problem is largely solved. I asked the people that were working on that ordinance if they wanted me to jump in, they wanted the county council. They said, no, don't do that. Let's get it passed in the town first, and then logically consider whether it should be implemented on the rest of the county. They made reasonable exclusions for small businesses and for small carryouts, food and things like that. I support that, and the town considered that, so it's good legislation.
So I want to add 2 points to that. First, I completely think that businesses are easier to get on board when you offer the fact up that they can now charge for the bags, right? And second, just because we're not going to solve the national and worldwide problems, I do not believe that means we don't do our part. So, thank you.
I
just want to second that sentiment. You know, there are a lot of things that I do in my home to just make an incremental difference in the world. You know, not just with the environment, but many things. And you know, just because we can't solve the world's problems individually doesn't mean that we shouldn't individually contribute to solving the world's problems.
I'm going to take the liberty to ask the last question before Kathy comes up here. But I'm going to start with you again, Dave. If you look at all the environmental issues, what's the most important one in your mind affecting Talbot County?
I think the most important environmental issue facing Talbot County right now is growth that is poised to, again, not meet our comprehensive plan, but it is will be taxing an already overloaded infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, I'm talking about, you know, schools, roads, all the above. I believe that's the number one issue facing Talbot County right now, and I believe if we don't get a hold of that sooner than later, and again, as I mentioned earlier, start these conversations between the county as well as our municipalities. If we don't start those conversations earlier, Talbot County is going to be going down a road that I don't believe anyone in this room would like to see.
Thank you, Dave. David.
Thank you. I agree with everything Dave said about the importance of land use and preserving our rural environment. I'll just expand on it a little bit. I think we want to preserve our forests and our farmlands and our wetlands for our use for recreation, for enjoyment, for the contribution that they make overall to the quality of life and to our water quality and our air quality. I think we want to preserve a bay that supports crabbing, fishing, and other important activities. And I think that for both of those things, we have to make earning a livelihood on the land and in the bay continue to be a profitable operation. Because if we don't do that on the land, it's going to be sold off to developers, and there's going to be more and more political pressure on the county and more votes for people who want to let farmers do that. Likewise for the bay, we need to clean up the bay and maintain those opportunities for everyone, but we can't do it unfairly by taking away the livelihood of the watermen, because they live on the same things we want to have there.
Thank you, Dave. Lynn.
Yes, I agree that the biggest environmental issue facing our county is overdevelopment and creating more impervious surfaces, which create problems in a variety of ways. So I would, that's why I support, an adequate public facilities ordinance to control that. And I think that the towns have to enact one too, because if all the development's going to occur there, how is that going to, it's going to impact us regardless. I'm not a fan of smart growth. I'm a fan of smarter growth, but just because, Governor Glendenning in 1997 created a smart growth plan, we can see now how that's gone off the rails, and it's endangering our way of life. And so I would want to preserve environmental issues with control over further development.
Howard, I'm not going to play by the rules. I'm going to give you two answers. I'm going to give you.
I can absorb those.
I'm going to give you the short-term answer, which is water quality, and it's all the things that contribute to water quality here. It's wastewater, it's septic, it's ag, it's stormwater runoff, and we can't solve the problem unless we address all of those. And we've got some important steps in place. The county gets to play a real role in all of those and needs to step up to the plate. And we can see the difference. We can see the difference. We've seen it in some of our waterways. Now, to the second one, it's the long-term problem. It's sea level rise. We're in a low-lying area, and it is going to take us a long time to adjust to sea level rise. Even 1-2 meters of sea level rise has a huge impact for an area like Bay 100. We need time to make those adaptations to make sure that we can continue living and enjoying and loving this place.
Thank you, Pete. Scott.
Thank you very much. Pete, I think you cribbed off my notes here, or I cribbed off your notes, because that's exactly my answer. And it's one answer, and it's in the short term, water quality is the most important thing, and we need to focus on water quality, which means improving the sewerage and septic systems in our low-lying areas so that there's no runoff into the bay. That's critically important, and we need to find the funds to do that. But the long-term answer is it looks like climate change is here and the sea level rise is going to impact us all. What we need to do is right today start working, building up our roads, getting rid of the low-lying areas so that when it rains or when there's a high flood, high water, we can drive out of our neighborhoods. This is going to take some money, but as Chuck says, there are 406 miles of roads in the county. How do you go about doing that? I worked with Chris Van Hollen and Ben Carden just as late as a week ago, had a meeting with both of them and talked about where do you get the money? And they say that there's money in the ARPA funds so that we can get ARPA funds coming to the counties to do these things.
Thank you.
Oh, stop signs up.
Thank you.
It is possible to miss the stop sign. An area
Tell
that-
your 13-year-old that?
Yeah, I will. 2016. Wastewater treatment, clean water, this is really important. It's taken me 3 years to get a wastewater treatment plan transitioned to the county. And I know the county's worked darn hard to make this possible. There are other entities, MDE, Akron and Maryland Department of Environment, that have not been helpful in getting that to take place in a judicious fashion. So, and I see a path to solving major wastewater treatment issues in this county. I see a path, and it's possible. And it's right in front of us, and we have a number of problems facing us. This county council has said that they would not approve privately run facilities in this county. You know, we have an obligation to hold steadfast on that. We have an obligation to make sure that our water is clean, because so much of what we do in this county is contingent on clean water.
Thank you, Keisha.
Yes, I'm going to echo what Pete and Scott and Phil said. Clean water is number one. One thing that we can look into as well, all of us probably like going out on the water, sticking our feet in the water, boating, etc. No discharge zones are one thing that I have worked on in the past as it relates to clean water. And then of course we are experiencing flooding, as it's been mentioned, in the Bay 100 area, Tillman area. Another thing that I worked on in Dorchester County is that in our comprehensive plan, we put things in place that would help with the sea level rise and the flooding, particularly of the Hoopers Island area. That's something that I think that we can adapt and develop in Talbot County, as well as looking at other case studies. What has been done in other rural areas or areas that are similar to Talbot County? And I don't think there is a cookie cutter approach to doing this, but I do think that clean water and keeping an eye on sea level rise and putting things in place to curb that is what we need to do in Talbot County.
So clean water is a human right, and I do need to start just there, especially with 600 miles of shoreline in the Chesapeake, or in Talbot County. It is just of critical importance that we all have access to clean water and access to the water. Another thing I would love to explore doing is there is the Shore Rivers does a swim guide every year that between Memorial Day and Labor Day on whether or not weekly they post their results on if it's safe to swim. And I would love to add signs at places like Claiborne and Beach that just says that, is it safe to swim, with a QR code so that before a child runs off into the water, moms can know whether it is actually safe to get in that water right now. And secondly, as well, the youngest person up here, yes, short term is definitely clean water, but long term, sea level rise is real, it's happening, and we're already dealing with the impacts of it. So we need to take hard looks at what we can do to move our critical infrastructure to higher ground.
Thank you. Chuck.
Okay, this council and the next council is going to be committed to wastewater. We're right now committed to $25 or $30 million project for the Bay 100 area that's getting ready to take place. I'm proud to be a part of the reserves and getting that straight. So the council's on board with all this stuff. There's not one person here that doesn't want clean water. The rural area here is great. We all live here. We all want things to be clean. So the council is committed to all this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy, the floor is yours, but may I ask the audience to applaud these folks?